The dough was rising, the scent of lemon and vanilla warm in the air, when Nathan walked into the kitchen and dropped a sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew about love. "Please, don't come to my brother's wedding." I turned from the mixer slowly, spatula in hand, confusion clouding my thoughts. "What?" Nathan avoided my eyes, fingers tugging at the cuffs of his button-down. It's going to be very public, a lot of press, and He took a breath like he was preparing to hurt me. "I don't want people to know you're just a baker. Just a baker." The spatula slipped from my hand and hit the tiled floor with a dull splat. I stared at him, heart thudding in my ears. I had spent the entire morning prepping for a charity order, cupcakes for foster kids graduating high school, while this man, my husband, stood in our kitchen ashamed of the very thing I poured my soul into. "I'm not coming because of your image," I asked slowly, unsure if I was more shocked or broken. He flinched. "It's not like that." "Then explain it to me, Nathan. Because from where I'm standing, it sure sounds like the man I married is embarrassed by me." He looked away, jaw tight. "I'm not embarrassed by you. I just think, this crowd, my family, they wouldn't understand. You're talented, Julia, but they see status, they respect credentials." I laughed. I actually laughed. "And what is it they think I do, Nathan? Fold napkins for fun? Play with frosting like a toddler?" He didn't answer. Instead he said, "I'll say goodbye now. I'll stay at the hotel with the rest of the family." He grabbed his suitcase and left. Quietly, without looking back. Not a single word about how much it hurt him to walk away. Not a single apology for reducing my life's work to a footnote he was trying to bury. The door clicked shut, and I stood there, the scent of buttercream still thick in the air, wondering how long I'd been shrinking myself to fit a mold that was never meant for me. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I didn't cry. Not at first. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, staring at the smudge of buttercream on the floor, waiting for the shock to wear off. But it didn't. Not when I picked up the spatula. Not when I boxed the cupcakes. Not even when I slid the tray into the delivery van. It hit me later, after the order was dropped off, after I returned home to an empty house and reheated leftovers he wouldn't be around to eat. That's when the tears came. Not loud or messy, just quiet and steady, like something inside me had sprung a leak I couldn't plug. I sat at our dining table, the same one Nathan had insisted we buy because it looked good for hosting, and I realized I'd been living someone else's version of success, not mine. In the beginning, I thought he saw me. The way he used to watch me decorate cakes like it was art. He'd said, "You don't just bake, Jules, you create joy." That man, the one who used to bring me coffee at 5 a.m. during wedding season, where had he gone? Was he ever really there? I remembered one particular night, a year into our marriage. We were at a fundraising gala surrounded by people who wore ambition like cologne. A woman in a red silk dress leaned over to me and said, "So, what is it you do, Julia?" "I own a bakery," I said with a smile. Her expression flickered. "Oh, how charming." Nathan laughed it off, put his hand on my back and said, "She's also got plans to franchise." Really brilliant mind for branding. I didn't correct him. I let him spin the story, shape me into something more acceptable. That was the first time I felt small beside him. And I've been shrinking ever since. That night after he left, I pulled out the photo album I kept hidden beneath my dresser. Not the wedding album. Not the polished, posed memories. The other one. The one filled with Polaroids from the bakery, flour-dusted smiles, birthday candles, kids biting into messy cupcakes with frosting all over their cheeks. That was my life, my world, my truth. I flipped through the pages and stopped on one of me and my mom. We were behind the counter of the original bakery, both in matching aprons, both laughing so hard our eyes were nearly closed. I was 19. She had passed away 2 years later, but I could still hear her voice. "Never apologize for where your hands come from, baby. The world eats with them." I pressed my palm against the photo, like I could somehow reach through it and feel her strength again. And maybe I did. The next morning, I opened the bakery early. Not for customers. Not even to bake. I just needed to breathe in the familiar scent of cinnamon and warm dough. I walked through every inch of that kitchen, touched every tool, every tray, every scarred countertop that had felt years of labor and love. It was sacred ground to me, and I had let someone make me feel like it wasn't enough. No more. No more dimming my joy so someone else could shine. No more smoothing my rough edges to make other people comfortable. I was a baker. I was an artist. And I was done apologizing. Just as I was preparing to reopen for the day, the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Julia? A woman's voice said, breathless. It's Emma. Nathan's future sister-in-law. She sounded like she'd been crying. I know this is unexpected, but I need to ask you something, please. It's about the wedding. And just like that, the story shifted. The past was still in the room, but something new had entered too. A door I hadn't planned on opening. Not again, but maybe, just maybe. This time, I'd be walking through it on my own terms. Emma's voice trembled on the line. I know I probably have no right to ask you, she said, but the bakery canceled this morning. The cake, our cake, is ruined, and the wedding's in 2 days. I leaned against the counter, the phone warm in my hand. I'm sorry to hear that, Emma, but why are you calling me? Because, her voice cracked. Because I've seen your work. I know what you're capable of. And Nathan told us not to ask you, but I'm desperate. I let that hang for a beat. Nathan told them not to ask me. Of course he did. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. And what does your soon-to-be mother-in-law think about all this? There was silence on the other end, then a quiet, defeated, she doesn't know I'm calling. Figures. I looked down at my hands still dusted with flour, hands that had built something real. Emma added quickly, I'll pay, anything, and if you say no, I understand. It's just... Rachel's devastated. This wedding has become such a circus already, and the cake was the one thing she actually cared about. Rachel, Nathan's brother's fiancée, the woman I had only met once at a family dinner, but who smiled at me like a real person, not like I was a hired hand. I remembered her complimenting the bread I brought that night. It's like poetry, she'd said, tearing off a piece with her fingers, not a fork and knife like Nathan's mother tried to insist. I didn't have a reason to say yes. Not for Nathan, not for his mother, but maybe for Rachel, for a bride who deserved to feel joy on her day, and for myself, because I missed that fire in my chest that came from turning chaos into beauty. I need to see the space, I said finally, and I'll need full control, no one hovering, no one commenting. Oh my God, yes, Emma said, relief flooding her voice. I'll text you the address. Thank you, Julia, truly. I hung up and stared at the quiet bakery around me. So this is how the universe works, I thought. The same people who thought you were too small will come knocking when their world begins to crack. And when they do, you get to choose who you are. I didn't call Nathan. I didn't need his permission, his blessing, or his apology. Instead, I walked to the back of the shop, unlocked the tall cabinet where I kept my best tools, the ones I only used for once-in-a-lifetime events, and ran my fingers over the soft leather handle of my custom palette knife. This was not going to be a rescue mission. This was going to be a reminder. I was never just anything. 2 hours later, I arrived at the event hall, a historic estate with too many columns and not enough soul. Emma met me at the loading dock, eyes red, clipboard clutched like a lifeline. She tried to apologize again, but I stopped her with a nod. Just show me the kitchen, I said, and tell everyone not to speak to me unless it's necessary. We walked past florists arranging $1,000 centerpieces and servers practicing their tray walks. They looked at me, at my apron, at the flour on my shoes, and I saw it in their eyes. The assumption, the dismissal. And I smiled, because they had no idea what was about to happen. The kitchen was chaos. The ruined cake sat in the middle of the stainless steel prep table like a battlefield casualty. Frosting sagged down the sides, the tiers had tilted in opposite directions, and the color was a bizarre shade of yellow-green, like someone tried to match gold and got bile instead. I didn't flinch. I set my bag down, pulled my hair into a tight bun, and began assessing damage. Emma stood behind me, wringing her hands. They said it was going to be 5 tiers, she whispered. Floral accents, vanilla almond with raspberry. Rachel was so specific. I nodded, already sketching a mental blueprint. I'll need to rebuild at least 3 tiers from scratch. You have a walk-in freezer? She blinked. Yes, that way. Good. I'll need someone on standby to assist with prep. And make sure no one enters this kitchen without my say-so, especially not Margot." Emma let out a shaky laugh. "You still remember her name?" I gave her a pointed look. Some insults stick. She sobered, then said softly, "I'm really glad you're here." I didn't answer. I was already tying on my apron. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of motion, eggs cracking, mixers spinning, spatulas slapping against bowls. The kitchen transformed into something sacred. My domain, my rhythm. I worked with precision, confidence, and the kind of calm that only comes from years of turning flour and sugar into something unforgettable. By mid-afternoon, the new tiers were cooling. I carved and stacked them with a surgeon's steadiness, coated each layer with a smooth buttercream, and began piping delicate scrollwork with the ease of a musician running scales. The final tier, my signature, was adorned with sugar flowers that looked so real even Emma gasped when she saw them. "This is beyond what we asked for." I looked at the finished cake now centered on its display table, glowing under soft golden light. "I don't do asked for," I said simply. "I do unforgettable." Just then the door creaked open, and in stepped Margot, perfectly dressed as always, but her heels clicked with a little less certainty on the tile. Her eyes fell on the cake and widened. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then, stiffly, "You did this?" I didn't bother looking up from my piping bag as I adjusted the final rows. "I did." She hesitated. "Well, thank you. It looks acceptable." I laughed under my breath. "Your standards must be slipping." She flinched, but said nothing. A minute later, she left. It was enough. I didn't need her praise. I didn't need any of them. I had the cake, and it was magnificent. As I was wiping down the counter, Nathan walked in. He didn't look like the confident PR man I'd married. He looked smaller, unsure. He approached slowly. "Julia." I didn't stop cleaning. "I heard what you did." "I'm sure you did." "I just wanted to say thank you. You saved the day." I finally turned to face him, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "Did I?" He looked startled. "Of course. Everyone's talking about it. The planner says it's the most elegant cake she's seen in years. You should have seen Rachel's face." "I didn't do it for Rachel," I said. He frowned. "Then why?" I met his eyes. "To remind myself who I am, who I've always been, before you tried to turn me into someone easier to explain at dinner parties." He stepped closer. "Julia, maybe this could be—" "No," I interrupted. "You don't get to pivot now that you see what they see. You buried me the moment I didn't fit the image you wanted. Now that I've shined without your help, you want to rewrite the story." He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. "I'm not angry anymore, Nathan. I'm just done." Then I picked up my cake box, tucked my tools back into my bag, and walked past him. He didn't follow. Because this time, I didn't leave space for him to. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. The reception was in full swing when I entered the grand ballroom from the back. Soft jazz drifted through the air, clinking glasses and laughter bouncing off the marble walls. Guests twirled on the dance floor in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos, unaware that the towering cake standing like royalty in the corner had been seconds from disaster. I didn't intend to stay. I just wanted one look, one quiet moment to witness what I'd created. Standing tall under the chandelier's warm glow, but people noticed. First, a woman in a navy satin dress approached, a flute of champagne in hand. "Are you the one who made that?" I nodded. "It's stunning. Magazine-worthy." Then came another, a young man with a camera slung around his neck. "I'm shooting for the lifestyle spread in Charleston Living. Do you mind if I feature your bakery?" Before I could respond, a third woman with a diamond necklace leaned in. "Do you travel for private events? I'm hosting a gala next month in Atlanta." And just like that, the floodgates opened. Producers, publicists, even a culinary influencer I'd once followed on Instagram, all gathered around me, praising the design, asking for cards, offering connections. They didn't care I was just a baker. They saw what I had built with my hands and vision. From across the room, I caught a glimpse of Nathan. He stood beside his mother, watching me, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he made his way through the crowd and stopped a few feet from where I stood. "You're the talk of the night," he said, forcing a smile. I sipped the champagne someone had handed me. "Funny how quickly people change their tune when the product becomes valuable," he winced. "Julia, I was wrong about everything, about you." "No," I replied calmly. "You were right about one thing. I am just a baker, and that's enough." His gaze dropped, and for the first time, he didn't try to fix it, didn't try to convince me to spin my identity into something shinier. And that silence, that surrender, felt better than any apology. I didn't linger. I made my way to the exit as the DJ announced the first dance. The ballroom lights dimmed, and the spotlight fell on the newlyweds. Rachel looked radiant, her dress, her smile, and behind her, the cake. The cake I built with my hands, with everything they once dismissed. I stepped out into the evening air, the sound of music fading behind me, and exhaled. I had entered that estate as an outsider, the woman they asked to hide. I was leaving as someone unforgettable. Not because of the cake, but because I no longer needed anyone to define my worth. Not Nathan, not his family, not the guests in gold and velvet, only me. And I had never felt more sure of who that was. The next morning, the sun poured through my bakery windows, casting golden light across the counters. I stood alone before opening hours, sipping my coffee, the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls rising from the oven behind me. It should have felt like any other Sunday. But everything was different now. On the counter sat a stack of new business cards I had ordered on a whim a few months back, cards I'd been too hesitant to use. They had a new logo, bold and clean, Julia's Table. Custom cakes and celebration artistry. Underneath, a simple tagline, crafted with hands that understand joy. I picked up a card, ran my fingers across the raised lettering. I wasn't hiding anymore. The doorbell chimed and Zoe, my assistant baker, stepped in with a wide grin. "You're famous," she said, tossing her bag behind the counter. "You're all over social media. That influencer with the blue hair posted a video of the cake cutting, over 600,000 views overnight." I blinked. "Seriously?" "Oh, and we got 12 new booking requests just this morning, including someone named Rachel. She says she wants you to design a cake for her film's wrap party. Personal request. No Brooks involved." I let out a surprised laugh. "Looks like I'll need to dust off the fondant again." Zoe leaned against the counter. "You okay?" I paused, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I am." Later that day, I drafted a post for the bakery's Instagram. I kept it simple. There was a time I believed I had to soften who I was to be palatable to others. That time is over. To anyone who's ever been told your work, your passion, your hands weren't enough, this is your reminder. You are not just anything. You are exactly who you were meant to be. The post went live, and in the hours that followed, comments poured in. Women from all over the country, chefs, florists, teachers, seamstresses, mechanics, sharing their own moments of dismissal, of rising, of reclaiming. I wasn't alone. I was part of something bigger. That night, before locking up, I stood in the middle of the bakery and turned off the lights one by one. The last glow flickered out above the sign on the door. I smiled. The woman who used to flinch when someone called her just a baker was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, brighter, and finally free. And tomorrow I would bake again, but not for validation. For the joy, for the art, for me. 2 weeks later, the bakery buzzed with quiet energy. I was piping flowers onto a 3-tier anniversary cake when the little brass bell above the front door chimed. Zoe looked up from the register, ready to greet whoever walked in, but paused mid-step. Julia?" she called gently. "It's for you." I looked up, and there he was, Nathan. He stood in the doorway in a crisp button-down and slacks, like always, but something in his posture had changed. Less polished, more humbled. His hands were in his pockets, eyes scanning the bakery as if seeing it for the first time. I didn't stop decorating. "I heard you're booked out 6 months in advance," he said, voice quiet. I nodded without looking up. "Try 9. He chuckled awkwardly. "I guess I underestimated you." I finished the last swirl of buttercream before meeting his gaze. "No," I said calmly. "You underestimated yourself. You thought you needed a wife who matched your world. You never stopped to think that maybe I had my own." He swallowed hard. "I came to say, I'm sorry." I studied him for a long moment. His eyes weren't defensive anymore. There was no sales pitch behind them. Just a man facing the truth. "I appreciate that," I said. "But I've moved on, Nathan, not just from you. From the version of me that needed someone else to validate who I was." He looked around at the photos on the wall, pictures of cakes, smiling clients, a framed article from the local paper with the headline, "The Woman Who Saved the Cake and Herself." "You built something incredible here," he said. "I did," I agreed. "And I'm going to keep building it, with people who see me, All of me. He nodded slowly, then took a small step back. Take care, Julia. You too, Nathan. He turned and walked out, the door shutting gently behind him. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the quiet. Not broken, not triumphant, just whole. Zoe raised an eyebrow. That was something. I smiled and picked up the next piping bag. That, I said, was closure. And just like that, the chapter closed, not with revenge or regret, but with resolve. Because this story was never about proving my worth to someone else. It was about remembering it for myself. And now I had cakes to create, a team to lead, a future to shape, and hands that would never again be hidden. This story is a powerful reminder that no one should ever feel small for doing what they love. Julia's journey proves that dignity doesn't come from status, but from standing tall in your truth, even when others try to shrink it. If her strength and transformation moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Type 2 if you loved the story, or 7 if it didn't quite resonate. And if you enjoy stories about real resilience and rediscovered worth, make sure to like this video and subscribe to EN Reddit Story, because more powerful journeys are coming your way.